Story title: He entered as a maid but changed a billionaire's destiny. What happened next? Before the city woke, before buses honked on Ikordu Road, before Lagos spilled its noise into the morning sky, Ruth was already awake. Her bare feet touched the cold cement floor of the servants' quarters, the smell of kerosene and stale soap clinging to her room. She tied her wrapper tighter, lifted a bucket heavier than her frame, and stepped into the quiet dawn. Behind her, the Adams mansion loomed with high walls and faint glowing lights. Inside, silk sheets covered those who never knew hunger. Outside, Ruth carried their water. But in one locked room upstairs, behind drawn curtains and bottles of medicine, lived Julian Adams, the crippled heir of the empire. Once a man of ambition, now bound to a wheelchair after a terrible car accident, Julian lived in silence. No one dared disturb him. No one dared draw near. Except Ruth. Her life had not always been like this. She once ran barefoot through puddles in a jeej, laughing with her younger brother as they kicked a torn football. Their mother, Mary, roasted corn by the roadside, her laughter echoing even when her hands were blackened by smoke. But when sickness took Mary, debts came like shadows. An uncle, greedy-eyed, whispered, "At least in the city you will eat. At least you will have work." And just like that, Ruth was sold, not in chains, but into servanthood. She remembered her childhood roof leaking, the pot boiling empty, her torn school bag lying forgotten. Yet her mother's words stayed. Even poor hands can heal a wound. Don't forget that, my child. It was one quiet evening when she first truly saw Julian. She had been sent to clean his room, a place no maid lingered. The curtains were heavy, the air stale. He sat by the window, his blanket covering his legs, eyes fixed on the chaos of Lagos far below. Her hands trembled as she arranged the tray. Then clang, the spoon slipped and hit the floor. His gaze shifted, sharp but not cruel. For a heartbeat, it softened. "Sorry, sir," she whispered. "It's fine," he said quietly. That night, lying on her mat, Ruth replayed the moment again and again. For the first time in months, she had not felt invisible. Days turned to weeks. Slowly, Ruth brought life into Julian's room. She left him small tokens, a folded hymn page, roasted plantain, stories of street life. Julian began to ask questions. Do children still chase buses? Do women still sell bread on corners? Ruth answered with laughter and warmth, filling the air with more than silence. But not everyone approved. Mrs. Adams, the housekeeper, pulled her aside. "Be careful, my child. Men in pain cling to light, but gold that shines too bright can burn your hand." Ruth nodded, but her heart was already entangled. The night of the grand banquet was supposed to be joyous. For the first time in years, Julian agreed to be wheeled into the dining hall. Ruth stood quietly in a corner, pride swelling just to see him there. Glasses clinked, laughter rang. Then came the voice of Michael, Julian's cousin. "She, just a servant girl. Do you even know she was sold into this house like property? Don't fool yourself, Julian. She wants your money, nothing else." The words cut deep. Ruth froze, tray trembling. She turned to Julian. His silence hurt more than Michael's insult. He said nothing, defended nothing. That night, Ruth packed her nylon bag. Tears blurred her sight. "I was foolish to believe I mattered," she whispered, and she left the mansion behind. The streets of Yaba became her new world. She found work in a small clinic, not as a nurse but a cleaner. Yet as she scrubbed floors and carried water, she watched closely. She listened to doctors explaining bones, watched nurses mend wounds, and learned how kindness could heal. Her mother's words echoed. Even poor hands can heal a wound. But it was not easy. Some mocked her. A nurse sneered, "You? A maid girl? What do you know about healing?" Ruth swallowed the insult but refused to quit. At night, she practiced on herself, wrapping her hands, cleaning small cuts, memorizing every motion. Each failure burned, but each attempt made her stronger. Meanwhile, Julian sank deeper into isolation. Wealth surrounded him, but warmth was gone. He remembered her laughter in his empty room, and silence became unbearable. For the first time, he realized the cruelty of his silence at the banquet. It had not just broken her, it had broken himself. One dawn, wringing out a rag, Ruth whispered to herself, "I will never beg to be seen again. I will make myself into a light no one can ignore. Months later, the Adams Company faced disaster. Shareholders demanded answers. Scandal and corruption had shaken trust. Julian, crippled and shaken, was forced to lead a board meeting. In the glittering conference hall, he sat at the head, hands trembling, voice unsteady. His cousin Michael smirked, ready to watch him collapse. Then the doors opened. Silence swept the room. Ruth walked in. Not in rags. Not as a maid. She wore the modest uniform of the clinic, holding files. She had been invited to present a health proposal on behalf of her team. Julian's breath caught. Her voice was calm, steady. Lagos bleeds from neglect. But with your resources, you can build clinics. You can rebuild trust. You can heal not just bodies, but a reputation. Michael scoffed. Who are you to speak here? Ruth met his eyes. I am someone you thought invisible. But invisible people see what you cannot. And today, I will not be silenced. The shareholders leaned forward, drawn in. Julian, seeing her strength, found his voice. Together, they defended the plan. The room shifted. Applause rose. The vote passed. Michael tried to argue, but the board cut him off. For the first time, his arrogance cracked. He shouted, accused, pointed fingers, but no one listened. The more he spoke, the smaller he looked. And when the final decision was read, he slumped in his chair, defeated, exposed, forgotten. Michael's wealth collapsed in the scandal. Alone and bitter, he shrank into silence. But Julian, though still in his wheelchair, found hope again. Therapy restarted, this time with belief, not despair. Ruth visited often, not as property but as an equal. One night in the courtyard, Julian whispered, You didn't just heal me, Ruth. You healed this house. You healed silence. Her eyes brimmed. For the first time, she felt chosen, not owned. In a small church in Cyrillaire, Ruth lit a candle beside Julian. She introduced him to Nurse Grace, her mentor. Together they prayed, not for riches but courage. Outside, Lagos roared, horns, cellars, chaos. But inside their hearts was peace. Ruth was no longer the girl sold. She was the woman who healed. And Julian, once lost in silence, had found his soul again. The story didn't end with riches. It ended with dignity, with hope, and the quiet victory of two imperfect souls who chose light.